All right, guys, so today we are going to be looking at England's first attempt at really settling into the New World and what we call our home today in America. And this is a mystery. Our first attempt at trying to settle the New World ends up being quite the epic fail because the colonists disappear. And that is what we're going to be trying to figure out is what happened to them. And the good thing about this is nobody knows what happened to them. So you guys really can't be wrong as long as you know you've got a pretty convincing argument. So this first colony, or this first attempt at a colony, because it was never successful, is called the colony of Roanoke. And we call it the lost colony of Roanoke because literally they're lost. We don't know where they are. So you may have heard of Roanoke before if you're an American Horror Story fan. They did an entire season, I believe it was season 6, about or based in Roanoke and kind of surrounding the disappearance of the colonists. If you're a Supernatural fan, they've also made references to it in that show as well. So it's technically America's oldest mystery. We don't know what happened to them. We find evidence that tends to contradict themselves, and we don't really know what's real and what's not real because it's from so long ago. So this is what you guys are going to be doing for over the next couple of days. So in 1587, 115 men, women, and children are going to leave England. They're going to head towards this new life in the basically unsettled land of North America. Once they arrive, it becomes very evident that they're pretty much doomed. They have to send their governor, who's supposed to be their leader, who actually has experience at this island, back to England to get more supplies, but he gets caught up in a war and is not able to return for 3 years. And by that time, they're gone. They've literally vanished. And like I said, this is America's greatest mystery, or at least its oldest mystery. So where did they go? What happened to them? There's no evidence of them being like massacred by Indians. We've never found any bodies or any remains from these people. So it's what happened to them. And there's so many theories, and some theories are way crazier than others. But that's what you guys are going to be coming up with today. You guys are going to be looking at some evidence, and you are going to figure out what you believe happened to these people. So let me give you some backstory on this colony, because even though they disappeared, we have at least, been going back and forth to this colony for a few years prior to this actual disappearance. So just some background information that you're going to need to know. So all Europeans are beginning to settle the New World. And Spain kind of has this monopoly down in South and Central America. So England, who's pretty much always in direct conflict with Spain, wants a little piece of it, right? So they are going to start sending expeditions to start staking out the land and eventually colonizing there. And I do want to point out here that you see, this is really the first time you guys are talking about England in history, and England and British and Great Britain and Britain, those are all interchangeable. Same place, okay? You're going to hear all of those used, and I'll tell you that I remember being confused about that when I was young, so I always like to point that out, that England and Britain, same exact thing, okay? So England is also they were the ones that owned our colonies before we gained our independence. So they are kind of who we're descendants of. Most of us are descendants of, at least dating back to those earlier times. So just to kind of keep that in mind. So in 1584, Sir Walter Raleigh, North Carolina, named after him, sends an expedition to search for an ideal place in the New World to make a settlement. So this settlement's going to serve as two purposes. One, it's going to serve as a military kind of command spot because Spain's settling over there. We know we constantly have conflict with Spain, so we should probably have a place set up just in case we get into a scuffle. And then it is also going to be kind of a nucleus base where we can, have supplies, and as exploration is happening, it can kind of be like a one-stop shop. So this is the idea that Raleigh has. So he sends this expedition. They end up arriving to the coast of the Carolinas. They think they're in Virginia. They're actually more in the outer banks of North and South Carolina. And they end up on this island, and they name the island Roanoke after the natives that live close by. So these explorers figure out pretty quickly that they want to go back, right? They don't have the resources that they need. They're getting a better feel for this land. They've learned a lot, and they've even started to reach out and make some friends with two, or not just two natives, but with some of the natives, the nearby natives, and two of them agree to actually go back to England so they can show them to the queen and try to learn more about each other's culture and whatnot. Montea is going to be the more popular of the two because he actually trusts the natives, or the English. He kind of likes the attention, whereas Wanchese is like super like he does not trust them. He doesn't think that they don't have good intentions in the New World. He's kind of seeing right through, and he's pretty much right. But with them coming back, I mean, this gets people excited, right? I mean, that's scary when you think of going and settling into a place that has nothing, or like absolutely nothing. At least now, if you go out into the wilderness, you are in walking distance for the most part to some type of civilization. This is completely uncharted territory, literally, and we know that natives are there, and some native interactions have been great, some not so great. So by bringing these natives and bringing them back to England, this is kind of showing like, hey, there's some hope here. And we're starting to see a lot more interest in wanting to settle into the New World. So Queen Elizabeth, like I said, very impressed with this, ends up actually knighting Raleigh, and Raleigh decides he's going to get another expedition together and try this thing again, try to learn more about this area. They end up naming this land and this area that they're starting to settle into Virginia in honor of the Queen. And so Raleigh sends this party of 100 soldiers. Some of them are miners, some are scientists, some are artists to draw pictures of the wildlife or the plant life and map things out and kind of give us a better idea of what this new world is like. They put Ralph Lane in charge of the expedition. This pretty much is the worst decision to make because Ralph Lane proves not to be that great of a leader. First of all, they arrive way too late in the season to even begin planting. So they have got no way to really get a food supply going in the New World. They just can rely on what they brought. And then their supplies are dwindling quickly. It's not like we have years of experience of exploring. They really haven't quite figured out that sweet spot of what do we need to survive. And then to make matters worse, Lane, who used to be a military captain, which is kind of why he was put in charge there, he ran this place like a, well-oiled machine. If you stepped out of line, he put a prison together, and you would be punished. But furthermore, he makes enemies with the local natives, and that is not going to be beneficial for really any English settlers in the area from here on out. He even ends up killing their chief. So definitely not in great standing with the natives in this area. So by 1568, Sir Francis Drake, who's just another person that's, holding expeditions along the coast there, knows that they've set up a little something in Roanoke and stops by. And when he gets there, Lane and his men are pretty much fed up. They're done with it. They are ready to go home. They had sent back for supplies, and that ship hasn't made it back yet. They're starving. They're thirsty. They are just ready to get out of there. They want nothing to do with it anymore. So they end up abandoning that settlement. They hop on board with Drake, and they head right back to England. A few days later, ironically, the ship that was supposed to be bringing them reinforcements and supplies arrives, like within the same week. They get there, they realize, hey, there's nobody here. They've got this, well-built fort. They've got some supplies here. They don't really want to lose this location. So the captain of this expedition ends up leaving 15 of his own men to hold the fort. So they're just supposed to be defending this fort in case, the Spanish, you don't want the Spanish just to come on by, see free fort and take over it with at least no, battle. So he leaves these 15 men to hold down the fort. And then they all head back to England. The rest of them head back to England. So Raleigh's not very happy at Lane about all this. Lane is not going to get to return to the New World. But Raleigh doesn't give up. He says, he begins to recruit a more permanent settlement. He realizes that, okay, if I just send a bunch of guys over to an area, they're not going to stay there forever. Got to send like their family and their kids and stuff. And then maybe we'll get a settlement going. And this will, if this is a success, then here we'll have this land and we can make money off of it by more colonists heading over there. So he's got like this vision. And he decides to try one more time, right? Third time's a charm. Ends up not really being, but hey, this is what we'll go with. So this time he's going to appoint John White as the leader of this colony. We're going to call this colony the city of Raleigh. John White was a part of that first expedition. He's actually a really great map maker and a really great artist. He drew all types of pictures of wildlife in a journal to help England kind of understand what the New World was like. So he's got some experience, at least, in the area. So he's going to be appointed governor, and Raleigh gives him that honor. And along with the colonists, he has his daughter, who happens to be pregnant, Eleanor Dare. He's got a son-in-law, and then Montejo is coming back with them in this trip so that he can, make it back to his land. And he's an ally now. At this, White and him are, friends, and he's cool with the English, right? He's been going back and forth with England now 2 times. So Raleigh has this plan for John White and this group of 115 or 117 colonists that they are going to not go to Roanoke. Roanoke is not ideal. We've tried it 2 times. It's just not a great place. It's out there in the water, so you're not really surrounded by resources. You're limited, so you've got to take, boats inland where you have no protection, and that kind of defeats the purpose of having a fort. So they realize that, okay, we're not going to do Roanoke again. And it's also a lot more susceptible to poor weather and bad weather. So they decide we're going to try to go a little more inland. We want to set up this new settlement way more around kind of these areas so that we've got at least a little bit of protection from, weather and whatnot, and more access to resources. Problem is the captain who is in charge of the actual sailing of the boat, Fernandez, he had the plan that he was going to go pick up those 15 men that the previous expedition had left behind to hold down the fort at Roanoke. So the plan just pick those guys up and then head inland to this new place that Raleigh is wanting to settle into. But this captain is extremely impatient. He makes a lot of money off of being able to be in a war and protect England. So as war is starting to brew over in England, he knows he needs to get back. So he basically forces everybody to get off the ship at Roanoke and stay there. So totally against the plan, not what Raleigh wanted, and the 15 people are gone. The colonists are kind of freaked out by this. They get there, they're expecting to see, maybe a couple of them died, but they're expecting to see some men holding down this fort, and they're nowhere to be found. They do find at least one skeleton, and they have a pretty good idea that this was probably a attack, right? It's not like they just disappeared into thin air, but we don't really know where they are. We know that we at least have one skeleton, and they're a little uneasy. But they have no choice because he's kicked them off the ship. So they end up unloading their belongings and their supplies. They repair Lane's fort, and they realize, just like the other 2 expeditions before them, they don't have the things they need to survive. On August 18th, 1587, Eleanor Dare, who is John White's daughter, gives birth to technically the first English-born child on American soil. Her name is Virginia Dare. And I'm sad to say that we're pretty sure that Virginia didn't make it we'll get there. So 10 days after they arrive, Fernandez decides we got to go. We got to get back to England. This war is really heating up, and I got to get back. The colonists begged John White to go back with him so that he can get the supplies that are needed and come right back, get us the supplies that, we need to survive, and then hopefully be able to head inland where we're supposed to go. So John White ends up heading back with Fernandez. And that's going to be the last time that he sees his family. Because when John White gets to England, they end up getting trapped by this invasion of the Spanish Armada. And Britain is at war with Spain for the next 2 years. And if you're at war, and an armada is a fleet of ships, so it's like 300 ships that they send towards Britain, Spain does. And that is going to prove that they're going to need all hands on deck. So they can't be sending any other resources and ships back to this colony with 100-something people when their whole country is being invaded. So White has to wait. He has got no choice. So finally, after 3 years, he is able to get back to the colony. He arrives on August 18th, and he finds the island deserted. And it's surrounded by some of these high palisades, which are kind of like large trees, but like parts of a fort. And in one of these palisades, he finds the word Croatoan carved into it. And then upon further investigation, as they're looking for all these people, because these people are just literally gone, his whole family and the people that he originally came over with, they're nowhere to be found. And in a nearby tree, they see the 3 letters CRO written. So it's a little worried, but it is some of these clues are encouraging to him just because he knows the colonists. One thing that he's super happy about is Croatoan is the name of a local tribe, and that tribe happens to be friendly, and Monte is a part of that tribe. So if they did go head off and they are with the Croatan Indians, then they're probably okay because, Monte has got their back a little bit. But he also has this idea that maybe they're going to head 50 miles inland because that was the original plan anyways. When he got back, they were just going to go to that new spot. They weren't going to stay on Roanoke. So he's just thinking, hey, when I didn't come back for a year, they're probably like, hey, he's not coming back. Something must have happened. And they went and headed inland. So he's not too freaked out at this moment because he feels like he's got time. He's got some good leads on where he can go and figure it out. And then the most comforting of all the clues is he told them to leave this Maltese cross if they had to leave in distress, which means that they were forced or they were being chased or, they were being attacked, something along those lines, that they would put this cross as a signal that, things went badly. And there was no cross. There was no cross anywhere. So he's feeling pretty confident, feeling pretty good, ready to go find his family. However, huge hurricane hits and there's tons of damage to the ship. So they don't really have the resources to keep going and searching from, island to island or going inland and searching for the colonist. So they have to return to England. So remember Raleigh, who was funding all this and making all these trips happen in the first place? Yeah, he's pretty much done, right? 3 times he's had groups of people literally disappear. He's getting not a lot out of this place. We're not even finding gold, which was one of the main goals anyways. So he's over it. He's done. He's not going to keep sending people over, even though John White begs him to fund at least to be able to go find these his family and these colonists. He's just not worth it, right? They're probably dead. And so he never sends them back. And then White tries to raise the money himself, and that fails as well. So pretty much White's going to die never knowing what happens to his family. And he's with the rest of us. None of us know exactly what happened either. There are tons of clues that have emerged throughout the years, but we're talking hundreds of years ago. They didn't have the FBI, they didn't have the CIA, they didn't have the, forensic data that could help them really figure out what happened to these people. We think, there's possible that maybe they did end up joining into a native tribe and that those natives, maybe they were friendly and they continued to what we call assimilate and start, having children with natives. And eventually, as bloodlines are passed, you can't really tell who's white and who's Indian. So that could be a possibility, right? And we've got some evidence that points that could be an issue, that could be an option. We know that those Indians are super mad at Ralph Lane, and they don't know the difference between Ralph Lane and any other English person. So maybe they're trying to get back at the English, so they, kidnap them all and murder them somewhere. Who knows? Although their remains were never found, it would have been a long time before we were even able to get to Jamestown, the actual first successful colonist or settlement, doesn't even happen for another 20 years. So we're saying that if they were murdered immediately, that's a lot of time for a body to decompose, and it would be very difficult to find. So that's one, that they were killed. They could have died of disease, although we didn't see their bodies anywhere. So that's a hard one to prove as well. But you guys are going to look at some of these clues that they have gathered over time. And like I said, the historians are at odds about this. Even archaeologists are getting into it and trying to use dating science and figuring out, are some of these clues that we believe are clues actually clues. We've even had DNA tests now where we're starting to try to test people for blood of these original colonists, at least to be descendants, to know if they continue to live or if they just completely died. So this is literally the longest standing mystery in United States history. And that is what you guys are going to be doing today. You guys are going to be looking at some of those clues, and you are going to try to figure out what happened to them. And the great thing is you can't be wrong, because if historians who have dedicated their whole life to this can't figure it out, don't really expect you to figure it out with the limited choices that we have. But what I do want you to get used to doing is, finding evidence to support some type of claim that you're making. So just like you had to make the claim on Christopher Columbus, whether he was a villain or a hero, you're now going to make a claim on what you think happened to these colonists. So the directions are going to be kind of explained throughout the assignment, but I hope this gives you a little bit of background information to better understand the colonists and what kind of happened to them.